Bottom layer. Layer lowdown. This layer discusses how individuals with autism may have very low self-esteem or feel like they are not important or valuable. This can be due to things that happened in their past. It can be due to things that they feel anxious about. It can even be due to not hearing nice things from other people. I personally know a lot of people that struggle with this layer. Readers, Brandon, if this is the bottom layer, why isn't it saved until the end? From Brandon, this layer is far too sad to close the book with. Readers, but why didn't you start the book with it then? From Brandon, it would have been very difficult to discuss what's in this layer in depth without knowing about the previous layers and how they form me. Into the layer. I've accomplished a lot over the past several years between now and the time I wrote my last book. I'll share those accomplishments more towards the final layer of the book. But trust me, they are quite big. With all those accomplishments, many people would say I'm doing very well for myself. So why is it that I often look heavily down on myself? If I'm being honest, I don't even fully know the answer to that question. But I can share some reasons. Number 1, friendships. As I said, my lack of friends truly has taken a toll on my self-esteem. For those of you who aren't familiar with that word, self-esteem, it basically means how confident and proud someone feels about themselves. Anyways, even though I was judged for being different in school, part of the reason why I didn't have friends growing up was because of the tactics I used trying to get them. I couldn't make friends naturally, so I resorted to trying to get the attention of others any way I could. I mentioned in my last book that I used to bully individuals my age in order to get them to just talk to me, but I never really told any stories about what I did specifically. Here's one example. I had a neighbor back in my old neighborhood of 20 years. We will call him Kenny. In 3rd grade, I met Kenny and played basketball with him and some others. It felt like we were getting along. However, his parents grew tired of me quickly as I was saying naughty words. No, I will not call them cuss words. I was literally saying words like heck. But I get it. They didn't want their child exposed to that. So we stopped talking, which made me sad. I really liked Kenny. I remember 2 consecutive days in 3rd grade of me just pushing him to the ground for absolutely no other reason than to just get his attention. His parents talked to my parents, and eventually we had an on and off acquaintance relationship, which of course I thought was a friendship. On Tuesday, March 15th, 2005, we played a game called Mercy. It was this stupid game where 2 people held hands as if they were pushing against each other. They both had to bend each other's hand backwards to the point of pain until someone said mercy. That day, I was playing with others on the bus, and then Kenny wanted to play with me. I played and made his fingers go back too much. I heard him yell, "Mercy!" I stopped. By then he was in tears, telling the teacher he said mercy like 5 times, and I kept on pushing his hands. I genuinely didn't hear him, but somehow I got in trouble for it. I got punished by my mother. I love her more than anything. And the principal told me to sit in the front seat of the bus for the rest of the year. Oh wait, I'm exaggerating, I'm sorry. On the very last day of school, he was kind enough to allow me to sit in the back of the bus on the bus ride back home. This is the same nonsense as that story with Bonnie back in the memory layer. Anyway, in 4th grade, I didn't speak to him much, just like in 3rd grade after the bus incident. However, I wanted his friendship, so I continued to bully him horribly. I made threats, called him names, and even pushed him at times. The most idiotic thing I did was make racial slurs towards him, but they were slurs that would normally be directed at an African American like myself. He's Hispanic, but I ended up lying and saying he did all that stuff to me. It got to the point that both families wanted nothing to do with each other. Even the police got involved. I genuinely feel bad for the lies. Deep down, I did want to be his friend, but I was not smart enough to go about it properly. When I returned to school in 8th grade, we saw each other, but only talked every once in a while, and it usually wasn't the best of conversations. I miss Kenny a lot. Much like Mitch, I ruined things with him too. And I'm really sorry. To this day, I still struggle with how to make friendships. For a lot of people, making friendships comes more naturally to them, which is why it's not often that people can truly empathize with just how difficult it can be for people like me. Some have wondered if I ever tried looking into support groups, which I have. To keep a long story short, several of those groups weren't for me. Number 2, social media. Social media is also something that affects my self-esteem at times. One stressor I've had for years is making sure my posts get likes or reactions. For the purpose of this book, we'll just refer to them as likes. Parents, before you tell me, that is so my son or daughter, I get it, but it may be even deeper for me. I cannot tell you how many times I bother my sister to read and edit something I want to post on social media to make sure it's worded right and it attracts enough likes. Likes for me aren't just an accompaniment of my popularity. It's a way of making me feel important, you know? Whenever I post something that I think will get a lot of likes, and there haven't been many, it will destroy my entire mood. This is even more evident when I see others that have a heavy amount of likes. Another factor of this is when I see my age group going on these crazy vacations, going to weddings, or just enjoying each other's company. These things that are so normal and cool in society, the fact I experience little to none of it increases my feelings of being weird. I've had people question me so many times on whether or not I actually have a life or do things besides volunteer and mentor kids. It's really frustrating, but it's true. Brandon, you said not to compare. Why are you doing it to yourself? Good point. It just goes to show how easy it is to compare. When it comes to talking down to myself, I am notorious for being a hypocrite in that regard. One positive I will say about social media is that oftentimes when I make posts I'm not planning on making, but just feel strong about something or on impulse, I end up getting more likes than I thought. I remember on Wednesday, November 8th, 2023, I was feeling low and unappreciated. I made a post about how my one Christmas wish this year is for appreciation, and that the tangible gifts really didn't mean much to me. I got a lot of likes on that post, and many people gave me compliments. One person even told me that I was a beautiful person inside and out. This brought tears welling up to my eyes like a geyser, but I was able to stop myself from crying. Number 3, coworkers and managers, troubles at the E-Place. I want to mention another 2 facets of my life that I have had trouble with, especially while at the E-Place. This is the idea of standing up for myself against coworkers at work. If I went down the list in terms of letting coworkers and managers push me around, I need another book. So I'll keep it to a few examples. Before the COVID pandemic, I worked at a daycare that I loved. In June of 2020, once the restrictions were lifted, I was able to start working again. I had a coworker that I'll refer to as Allie. Allie came to the daycare with her son before COVID. The 2 were absolutely amazing beyond belief. The mother was strict with the kids, but still very pleasant to be around. We worked so well together. Her kid was even more amazing, often being a leader in my classroom. I was a school-age teacher during my time there, which meant I worked with the 5 to 12-year-olds. Most of my managers knew better than to put me with anyone younger than the 4-year-olds, sometimes the 3-year-olds. There's a reason I do late elementary and middle school teaching. Anyways, as far as the kid goes, he made small mistakes here and there, as all kids do, but he was still really awesome. However, once we came back from COVID restrictions, he wasn't meeting the same expectations he met before. I would have come down hard on him for this, which caused him to lose trust in me. I honestly blame myself for not anticipating this. It really wasn't fair for me to have those same expectations given the long pandemic break. An even bigger mistake I made was that he and his other peers, whom I was also tough on, saw me going easy on one of the newer school agers who had just advanced from pre-K, which made it even worse. In my defense, I was so excited to see my students after the long pandemic break. Thinking about them not being quite as behaved as before didn't even cross my mind. Also, I was going easy on the new school-age student because I was used to having him as a pre-K student. And my demeanor towards pre-K students in general was much more lenient than to the school-agers. This is not me justifying my actions, but I just want to explain where I was coming from. Regardless, it totally wasn't fair to him. So I apologized to the mother and had conversations with both him and his mother to make a commitment to turn things around. But then something happened. The son increasingly became more defiant and ruder. Kids will be kids, right? Well, yes, but it becomes more unmanageable when the mother starts disrespecting me in front of the kids and playing the "I am also a parent" card. This got so bad to the point where I wanted to quit. The sad thing was, I was always too passive to stand up to her. This is something I've always struggled with. Eventually, we had a new center director that shut her nonsense down so quickly. She also put the son in his place about his behavior towards me. Eventually, the son left for a new daycare, but the mother stayed. I feel like if the mother was more collaborative with me, we could have made things work with the son. But she wasn't. She even told a student in front of other students that her son was leaving the room for a few minutes because he needs a Brandon break. What? What made this even more insulting was that all the teachers in the school were referred to as Mr., Miss, or Mrs. first name. I can't lie, there were good things that took place. I had a supervisor there who I would call a sort of borderline friend. He always took time out of his personal time to talk to me and counsel me through challenging moments. To this day, because of my savant-like memory, I can only remember one time where he got short with me, which irked me a bit. But aside from that, 10 out of 10. He would always give me constructive feedback when I asked for it. He would even take phone calls just to listen to me vent. In my opinion, he was a top-tier supervisor who went out of his way to make me feel special and amazing for all the hard work I did at that daycare. And man, did I work hard! I had pretty much every minute planned with structure and engaging activities, a skill that has taken me far in my career. Unfortunately, my wallet always had a bad habit of going on unnecessary diets when I was at the daycare, if you know what I mean. Although it improved, my lack of standing up for myself followed me to the E-place as well. Even the times I did try to stand up for myself, my thoughts and feelings didn't feel validated. Here's the story. I was going to be co-teaching math with a teacher that I'll call Kathy. As soon as I met her, I knew this might be a difficult journey. Before I say why, I want to talk about another teacher who I worked with in my special education classroom at the E-place as we were both SPED teachers, special education teachers. This teacher took me out and treated me to breakfast prior to working with me. He spent the first half of breakfast just chatting with me about life and getting to know me before he started talking about business and my role. He was great. Back to Kathy. When I first met Kathy, we shook hands, she sat me down, and immediately told me her expectations in the classroom with me. Okay, I wasn't expecting breakfast or anything, but can we take like 3 minutes to get to know each other since we're going to be working in the same room as each other? Jeez. Even when I tried talking about myself a bit, as well as trying to get to know her, it wasn't really being received well. But I'm open-minded. Let's see how the year went. Just to get some vocab out the way. Co-teaching means two teachers teaching the class together. Content teacher is a teacher that has a background in the subject they are teaching, like a math teacher is a content teacher. Co-teacher is a teacher who generally has some content background, but mostly a background in teaching special education. So, research heavily supports that when co-teaching, whether you are the content teacher like she was, or the SPED teacher and co-teacher like I was, it was important that both teachers have a voice in the classroom and teach as well. Research argues against heavily using the model of the content teacher taking over most of the teaching, which is what she did. There were times where she would pass over the baton, but most of the time, it took a lot of arguing and disagreement to get to that point. Granted, I made mistakes when teaching at times. Okay, this is my first year teaching. Anyways, it got to a point where I vented to a couple of staff who were very receptive. I also vented to the so-called admin, and they agreed that should be more of a partnership as opposed to her taking over. Remember what I just said. Admin agreed on more than one occasion, by the way, that should be a partnership. Anyways, towards the end of the 2022-2023 school year, I had a meeting with Kathy and I had a talk with her about how things were going. I spent the first 2 minutes giving positive feedback about my experience with her and then went into the areas of concern. I was calm and respectful. When it was her turn to talk, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "It's hard to find anything positive to say." What? I've worked with people before that I would consider personal enemies. Even for them, I can think of positive feedback. She started sharing her points of concern, pausing at times, making me think she was waiting for a rebuttal from me. Then she snapped at me for interrupting her, and again, the low self-esteem in me just sat there and took it, which I'm very ashamed of. After the summer passed, we were about to start the 2023-2024 year together. We had a follow-up meeting in which I brought up the original comment she made about not being able to find anything positive to say about her experience co-teaching with me, despite me being able to do so. Her response was, "Not everything is rainbow and cupcakes." Wow. As we talked, she got very heated and started raising her voice at me even more. I got called out on liking to make jokes and banter with the kids. That is my way of building rapport with them. Of course, there's a time and place. However, I shouldn't have to apologize to anyone for not having the all-business mindset in the classroom. It was just hard for me to stand up for myself and say that, though. Again, I just took it. I literally forced myself to stop crying for several days after that. I kept asking myself, why can't we just get along? Although the school admin decided that it would be best for us to keep working with each other, it clearly wasn't the best choice. That being said, Kathy and I did come to an agreement about how we would be teaching. It worked for a good while, but then she started to go back to her old ways. She stated that my job is to focus on the students with special needs and try using documents to prove that. She's correct to an extent, but I can also do that in other ways than just assisting them. Even one of my supervisors stated that I was following the rules by also teaching the class as well while she provides some support. Eventually, I called another meeting with the admin, but this time she was there as well. This time, it was just the assistant principal that was facilitating, who I thought I could trust even more than the principal himself. We both explained our perspectives. Okay, remember what I said earlier about admin agreeing that both teachers should teach? Well, on Tuesday, December 12, 2023, I guess the rules changed, I say sarcastically. The assistant principal barely gave any validation to what I was saying, telling me I'm supposed to just support the students with special needs. I was taken aback, of course. I was hurt and shocked at the same time. Eventually, Kathy reluctantly agreed to go back to our both of us teach format, and it was somewhat sustainable. Again, I made mistakes here and there, but I also made a lot of strides that I'm very proud of. I feel terrible that I couldn't stand up for myself more effectively, though. But despite how much I did not see eye to eye with Kathy and the assistant principal, they were nothing compared to the principal at the E-Place. In the 2 years I worked at the E-Place, I had a total of 6 evaluations. The first 3 were done by my assistant principal in the 2022-2023 school year, of which my scores were quite exceptional. The 2023-2024 school year, my principal did the first and third one, and my special education department director did one. The one with the department director, I scored very high, but the ones with the principal were low. I wanted to be optimistic and not think the worst could happen. Little did I know the dreaded day was about to come. Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, is a day I can never forget. My principal spoke to me in my classroom about how this year has gone and said that my teaching skills needed improvement, to which he added this was my last year at the E-Place. I was shocked beyond belief. First of all, my classroom is a shared classroom in which other staff could come in at any time. So I'm the one that had to use common sense and ask to do the rest of the meeting privately in his office. I don't like using words like common sense, but come on! Anyways, his arguments for his decision were very unclear to me, and I was able to counter them with a point I had to make at every turn, but it made no difference. What didn't make sense was, 1, in 2023-2024, in addition to working with Kathy, I taught my own math classes for students with special needs, and the students' grades were overall very high. This was the class the principal primarily observed me in. 2, parents from the class would email me to thank me for all the work I did with their kids. 3, I offered tutoring sessions for students to come in and get extra help before a quiz or test was given, which was essentially me volunteering my time for no additional money. 4, newer teachers each year are supposed to give students a test of material they weren't taught yet. Then after the material is taught, teachers have to give the same test and see how the kids do. This basically determines if the teacher is actually teaching the material properly. I was given a rating as excellent, distinguished in that category of my evaluation. 5, I raised my students' overall confidence in math. I have been known to give quite a bit of homework. However, students that at the beginning of the year really doubted their mathematical skills ended up getting some of the highest scores on my quizzes and tests, which also were not known for being short and easy. 6, I came into the building to do extra work for my classroom completely voluntarily on Saturdays. Yes, you heard me. And other days the school was closed, with the approval of the principal, of course. I'd work on extra lesson plans, student documentation like IEPs, and so much more. Despite all these facts, nothing changed, me having to leave at the end of the year. After the meeting that day on the 28th, I had a break. I went to my car, called my sister, and started bawling my eyes out. This is something I hate doing, by the way, for reasons even I'm unaware of. I don't like having emotional moments with my family. It makes me very uncomfortable. It is far easier to do it with people outside my family. However, since this was through the phone, it made it easier. Not to mention I really needed to let it out. My sister was starting to get sad, stating that she hasn't heard me cry like that in years, as well as stating that she hates it when I'm this upset. I do love her. My mom was added on the call. They were both so worried that they wanted me to come home. But I had my club that day, and I would have felt terrible abandoning the kids. I'll talk more about my club later. So after I cried, I went back to work. That day, one of my club leaders noticed I had a sad expression on my face during the club. They came to me and immediately asked me to tell them what was wrong. Albeit a very sweet and caring gesture, all I could say was, I don't want to talk about it. And then the club started that afternoon. Even a week after the news was given, I tried a second time to advocate for myself, but it still didn't work. Since I'd only been there for a couple of years, I could be let go for any reason. No verbal warnings were given. No write-ups were given. I was just being terminated at the end of the year. Number 4, my weight. For as long as I can remember, I've always had a problem with weight. My BMI is nothing to be proud of. There are times when I've tried losing weight but always fell short. Prior to the bad news about my employment at the E-Place, my goal was to lose weight. But after the news, I got depressed and I gained even more weight. This is starting to lead to some really bad health complications. Part of the thing, too, was it pained me to go to the gym and see everyone there so naturally gifted with their workouts and me standing out, not even fully knowing what I'm doing. In 2022, I started doing Kung Fu, partially out of jealousy for all my peers, and even kids to an extent, who have those combat capabilities that I didn't have. I'll talk more about Kung Fu a bit towards the end, but I do enjoy it. Right now, I have had to take a hiatus on Kung Fu due to a health problem. Number 5, why couldn't it be me? There have been times when I felt jealous. Whenever I see these kids eating with their friends at lunch or being good at the sports they play and just being liked, it brings back old wounds of why couldn't I ever have that? Why couldn't my company be enjoyed when I was at school? Even when these kids would be dominating with good grades in school, I would feel it. Of course, I'm happy for them. But it makes me wish I could have had more of those moments of anticipation of telling my peers and parents of my good grades. Most of my middle school grades were pathetic. The same could be said for school sports. I wish I knew what it would have been like to talk with my friends when I was younger about this year's sports season that I'll be competing in and having the raggedy gray hoodie with my last name on the back. Number 6, finances. One of my biggest downfalls is coping with my lack of friends by eating, which circles back to my weight problem. Food becomes more and more of a comfort for me. Unfortunately, food costs money. In my case, it costs a lot of money. This is one factor of this section. The other factor is my need to please others. Oftentimes, whether it's my family, my mentor and his family, my mentees, or others that I care about, I feel the need to prove myself by spending money to make everyone happy. Basically, there was a point in my life where I dug myself into a financial mess. Fortunately, I'm clearing myself out of it. But it's sad that I even got to that point. Part of the thing is, whenever I would receive appreciation and praise from people, it was so worth it to where the money spent didn't even matter to me. Many of my mentees' parents want me to work on budgeting with their kids. I've been able to do this successfully. Why couldn't I have done this for myself and learned how to not use money to buy the happiness of others? Number 7, compliments and insults. In my years working with kids, I've come across individuals who would insult themselves. I'd be very receptive and quick to show empathy. Staff would wonder why I'm reinforcing the negative self-talk so easily at times, which is a valid question indeed. The reason is because it is a problem that I've had for years. I would see myself in those kids. Oftentimes, I insult myself in really vicious ways. I even remember at the E-place locking myself in the bathroom and saying things like, "Why am I such a loser? I suck. I'll never succeed," while practically crying. I would also sometimes say bad things about myself so others would give me compliments. As implied in the social media section of this layer, I am someone that is fueled by the compliments and appreciation from others. As such, I am drained by the unappreciation and insults from others. Oftentimes, I get upset with the students from the E-place when they didn't say thank you or show that they were appreciative for the things I was doing. I would often remind them that they didn't do this. Just so I'm clear, I wasn't in the mindset that, oh, these kids are just so ungrateful and mean. Not at all. After all, this is something almost all kids struggle with. I just really needed to hear those words of affirmation in order to feel like I did a good job. Whenever I'd be thanked and told things like, "We really appreciate you, Mr. Adjoumani," that helped me realize that I did a good job and the money spent wouldn't even matter to me at that point. But when I wasn't shown that appreciation, I just felt that I didn't do enough or I failed them. Number 8, hurtful words. I also am not the best at having people say hurtful things to me despite their intentions. Most of the time, this is the result of them taking their anger out on me. Whenever someone is stressed, I inadvertently do something to increase their stress, which causes them to lash out at me, and it sticks. It sticks like glue on paper. Most of the time, I hold it in, but it really hurts. People are usually able to tell right away when someone doesn't want to hear something because they're on edge. Why don't I have such a skill? If I did, fewer people would be irate with me so often. But the thing is, sometimes it's not because of something I say. It can be because of something I don't know how to do or not knowing what to say, like at a social gathering. I just wish it could all make sense.